I'm just gonna. Yeah. Many tactical parts of campaigns, whether it was the traffic coming to a website, how to pick the right kind of traffic. And I'm now 33. In the last few years, I've kind of moved away from like tactical execution into more the plan. So like the strategy. So while you might have great execution on tactics, like you were just mentioning about doing hashtags or whatever, if you don't have the overall plan, then tactics don't, like, you're just burning energy, but you're not actually getting to the end result. And this, I guess this is, I'm a digital strategist, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take you through how the hell do you put together a profitable campaign, or at least, even though it's not always guaranteed that you're going to make a profit, how do you stack the odds in the favor of actually making some money on the end of a campaign? So this is like the formula. We're just that's kind of going to be behind everything that I'm talking about, which is, are you investing in overall the traffic, so like the attention that's coming to a website, or are you investing in the website, so the actual content that makes people interested in what you're about? And then how do you balance those two parts of the equation to actually arrive at a profit? And I think an important bit, like, this is obviously an event conference. I've done some events. I on and off do events for Harvard Business Review, which are quite corporate in nature, a little bit in the HR community as well. But I'm going to weave in stories that aren't just from the event industry. And I think there's a lot of lessons from taking tactics and strategies from non-event space and applying it into the event industry. So, whoops, wrong button. Okay. This is where it started. Like, how many? I'm just curious because we're in Spain. Like, how many people have seen Glengarry Glen Ross? Just raise it. One. Really? Seriously? Okay. Like, this movie is much better than anything I'm going to say in the next 30 minutes. Yeah, we exactly should. But honestly, like, if there's one thing you remember from this, is go to YouTube and Google Alec Baldwin, like 7-minute monologue. It's this movie from the early 90s where Alec Baldwin comes in and he explains how to get people's attention all the way through to getting them to act on something. And I've used models as I've kind of moved into a strategic phase of my life. I've used models like sales models from McKinsey, and those were all right. I've played with models with clients that are kind of made up on the spot, and I've always come back to actually this clip that I learned when I was in LA, and my boss said, just internalize this, let it sink in. It's going to help you when you're trying to do marketing. So definitely, I'm going to break it down. This is how I view it. I sketched it on a notepad, and it's really at the top. No matter what you're trying to sell, whether it's events or a product, or like that gentleman's, selling to another business, if you don't get the market's attention, there's no chance to do anything with that. And because I'm a digital strategist, I view it as you might get paid. So paid is like just ads, banner ads. It's any paid advertising that you're doing. Then you might get PR. So that might be that you're trying to get press because it's the launch, or you've got an event coming up in 6 months and you want to start getting out into the industry, the news that you're around. You might at the top also be going for search. So that's just people looking on Google for maybe like events in this space or products in this space. Social, you just might want to be quite effective on being found with modern word of mouth, which is social. And then finally, direct. You might be trying to understand in the session, well, how the heck do I use email effectively, or how do I get people to, you know, whether it's like a pamphlet, like, you know, like an offline pamphlet. Maybe you're also at events and you're doing offline, you're speaking to people and you want to translate that moment into them visiting your website. So that's the top: attention, interest. I just think about interest as the first time someone comes to your website. If you're selling something on your website, whether it's tickets or a product, what happens when people hit your website for the first time? And because I'm a numbers guy and not so much a creative type, even though I wish I were, if it's boring, it's really easy to tell if your website is putting people off on the first visit. Then you go like a layer lower, and that's the desire. And the easiest way for me to tell that a product is getting desire or your website is creating desire is looking how many times people come back. If you have anything that you're selling and it's over like 100 euros or dollars, usually that purchase never happens on the first time someone comes to a website. Like, it's usually, it sometimes might be 6 times, and there's ways to figure this out, like how many times someone has to come to a site to like actually want to then move on to the last bit, which is the action, which it could be the sale, it could be the lead, it could just be brand awareness because you're trying to get awareness in your market and get a bigger share of it. So I'm gonna, and if I'm at all effective with what I'm taking you guys through, I try to avoid this, because if you're in like a team meeting with like a marketing meeting, and this sentence comes up or something similar, then you know like your strategy isn't sound for coming up with a campaign, because the moment someone says, well, let's try something else, it usually means that there hasn't been enough thought or logic placed into your actual like campaign creation. So part 1, and there's going to be 3 parts. Part 1 is how the hell do you come up with an appropriate budget? And I'm going to focus a bit on specifically events, but this can apply to anything. So this is usually where the money goes. You're going to spend it on your talent, which might also be the team, right? So you might have like, there's 5 of you that are running a campaign. You might have a couple external suppliers that are, you know, a consultant, maybe like someone that's running your ads. I like to lump that together. When I'm trying to come up with a figure, I first say talent. How much is this all gonna cost? Then I look at collateral. What are we gonna create that's interesting to the market? So on the site, between that first visit and those repeat visits, are we blogging? Are we creating really cool videos for social media? Like, I don't want to get bogged down on the details. I just want you to mentally lump like all the content and even your website as the cost being the collateral. And then finally, if you have a good team and you have good stuff that's interesting, think about the last section as traffic or promotion. So it's what is the money, and that's usually not a talent function. That is specifically paying LinkedIn to get your content out there, or Twitter, or you're buying a block of ads. Those 3 I find are quite like sensible to just kind of mentally cluster together when you're thinking of what's the budget that we need. This is this is like, and I'll preface it like I'm a little bit of a pessimist, like a cheerful pessimist, but I don't expect for every euro that you spend on marketing that you're gonna get 2 euros of profit. Like, that's fantastic if you're able to achieve anything like that, but this is like the real game, usually when you're actually doing a campaign, is how do we break even? And if we can break even, how do we start making a profit? especially like when it's the first time that you're running a campaign of its type. It's usually there's like when you first start a campaign, things aren't working. And I'll give you actual real examples in the next few minutes. And some things are coming together, but you're not sure quite like, like what actually you need to move and change to start getting the profit. So I'm going to go to that because I want that to me is success. When every euro you put in is equating to at least the same amount coming back and a little bit more, and that's where the profit comes in. This number, and so I'm going to talk about specifically about events. Break-even CPA. So CPA is something you will notice, but it's cost per acquisition. It simply means what is the number that you can spend to acquire a new customer or a client, and still, after all your operation costs are accounted for, how much money do you have to play? It might be that you have 100 that you can spend per new customer. You might be in an industry where you can spend up to 1,000 to get a new customer. You might be selling something that's very cheap, and so you actually only have 10 euros that you can actually spend to even break even. So it's like you're taking your marketing out of your profit margin. Like that's usually how I break it apart. So this might be for the event industry. I've done this a few times when we're trying to break a new event and we're not sure like how to price it. You lump up what is the total cost with, like, if it's an event, so like the physical space, the speakers, the ops that are actually running the event. I try to come up what is the total cost. Then I move over to, okay, so we got the total cost. How many people can we actually fit in here? Like how many people is this event designed for? And then the pessimist in me just puts 70% of that, because I've seen plenty of events that don't sell out. And if your strategy or your campaign is sound enough, you'll maybe get like at least the majority of the room filled. But it's like a bonus if you actually sell out. But you work on the fact of, if I'm going for profitability, I'm going to go for like filling up most of the room. Like I'm confident that can happen, but I might not sell it out. Anyways, so let's say it's like 1,000 people, and you're saying, at 700 people, I'd be quite happy. You divide that, and what that gives you, it gives you your break-even cost. So it's the lowest possible price that you can offer a ticket for it to make any sort of sense. Now you'll have a small pocket of tickets that you're giving away because you have relationships or press is showing up. Those don't count. Like that's part of marketing. That's an expense. I'm talking about like people showing up at the event. You're gonna find out what is the minimum for us to at all make any business sense to charge. And that's usually gonna equate to, like, I just put it, I blurred it down, but like that's your floor. That is like you cannot charge less for this ticket than at that point. And then your ceiling, and that's a whole different exercise, is how much value do I think this ticket provides? Because value is really simple. If someone thinks that the value is greater than the cost that you're charging, they'll do it. If they think that, oh, it's just a bit too expensive for what I think I'm going to get, they won't buy a ticket. Like it's, I might be oversimplifying, but there's a lot of truth to this. So, anyways, when you arrive at the base level, your base CPA, you can start to move. And before you start, like, okay, we're gonna, on those three where I said talent, the collateral, and the traffic, this right here, this is what moves the lever a lot. Like I find if you can invest a healthy chunk of time into this, think of like as an example, a newspaper journalist. Like, has anyone been in journalism before? I just out of curiosity. Any ex-journalists or no? Like, what often happens on a headline, like in a newspaper article, like a lot of effort goes into creating the headline, because they know if they don't crack the headline, no one's getting in to actually read the article, right? In an event, or if it's on a website, I don't even really care what you're selling. If you're not able to capture the sales moment, it's also known as a USP, like a unique selling proposition. no one gets in and you can't even build the interest or the desire. So what does that look like? This is an example, totally unrelated with events, but I'll just give you like a process and what the outcomes were. So an Australian company came with this. It's admittedly not a very pretty site, but I asked, well, what is the sales moment on the site? And if you look at it, it's like they're some sort of holiday specialist. Now, if I give you the background that people are spending about $3,000 for 5 days of walking in nice hotels, you know, like they walk along the Great Ocean Road or the Grampians or whatever, really scenic place, and then they have a really nice home-cooked meal in like a cabin or a small hotel, it doesn't quite feel like that's matching this sales moment. So what we did is we changed it. Hold on, whoops. We changed it to this. The sales moment is unplug and explore Australia's greatest landscape the healthy way. How we got to the sales moment, and this is the part where just never skip this part because it's like super important, is talk to your customer, at least 20 of them, and spend 30 minutes with each of them. And what you want to get out of there is, what is the point that someone would want to spend time with your company? So when I look at this, like, I know that having spoken with 20 of them, I got, I hate being trapped in a bus with tourists. Now, another few people said this, and I caught it. They're like, I just like the fact that I don't have to have my phone on me, and I don't have to be weighed down by constant notifications. Then there was a lot of memory making. I love being in what Australia has to offer, like the landscape, the beauty of it. And then there was also the indication of, I like to be healthy. Like, I pride myself on being a healthy person. When you start hearing the same lines from people, that's starting to become your USP. And so you take note of that and you create this. Now, while all the pages were the same on the old site and the new site, here's where the money comes in. When 100 people came to the old site, one person became a customer. When 60 people came to the new site, one person became a customer. And you can imagine, if you're like a low seven-figure business, what that does to sales. You haven't changed the amount of traffic coming to the site. You haven't really changed what you're offering. You've just repackaged, and you've made it more interesting, and you've made sure that the emotion grips them. So here's another example. This is not a very good photo, but I used this one instead of some of the fancy photos that we took. This is me literally with my camera last year. I just took like a shot of this room of about 400 people because I had like this emotional moment where I was like, oh my gosh, we filled the seats. Like, I was terrified even 2 months before that we weren't going to fill the seats. They're about roughly 500 quid per seat, right? This is in London. And I'm going to go through things that went well and things that didn't go well. So again, we did, to arrive at the sales moment, and there's lots of information on this, but like if you Google empathy map, like empathy mapping process, it's a way to understand not only the demographics of who you're selling to, but really importantly, what are the emotions? And we don't have time to actually like pull it all apart, but if you understand like what people are feeling, who they're listening to, what kind of news sources they're reading, what they do for their leisure time, there's a lot that you can do with marketing. And then you can go into tactics instead of just like blindly thinking we should be doing Twitter because everyone else is. So you want to come up with these. You want a buyer persona. And in the past, it used to be called target market. But I think buyer persona is a little bit more advanced, because what it does is it grips what someone does with their day, what they're after, like what do they spend their time consuming when it comes to the media. And having maybe 1 to 3 buyer personas for a campaign, and no more of those. Like, if you have just one buyer persona or maybe 2, that's usually so much easier to market to that group than if you're trying to get like the lot of people. Because in branding, if you're trying to appeal to a lot of people, you're like lukewarm with everyone. But if you specifically say, oh, I know that you're really interested in like events and media, and there's a specific event that I'm inviting you to that's all about that, and it's specifically for publishers. If you can identify that, and I just know because you told me a little bit about what you do, that's going to be way more interesting than if I'm trying to open up the net too wide and catch everything. So these buyer personas, again, just like this is like it's all over the place, but doing the empathy map and a buyer persona and just having a small like paper like this when you're in the meetings creating a campaign, this stuff's good. Like this stuff, every decision you make, you're like, will our main persona like actually want that? Will they be there? So anyways, this is how that event actually came together. Along there you see Europe's largest emotional intelligence event. And that's because we did the same thing. That photo this is the front page of the website from that photo I showed you a little bit earlier. It's not the sexiest line, Europe's largest emotional intelligence event, but it taps the key sales moment that those people in the room were after. And that was that they wanted to network. Like the number one benefit was networking with like minds in the industry, because there's not that many in the industry, and they wanted to be where the industry was. And by identifying that it actually was the largest event, that made it feel like, oh, this is somewhere we really need to go. But this isn't like the first line we came up with. We tested many different lines and they weren't resonating. This one, and I'm sure it could be better, was actually the one that made people stick on the homepage and like, and actually do some more repeat visits to the website. So trust signals, and I'm going to go into, it's a little bit out of focus, but the person on the left right here, we're going to get into why he was paid $70,000 to come and speak at the event. And that's because of this. I quickly checked in Google Trends. You get like if you're doing an event and you want to see like is someone going to lure enough people? Like do they have enough of a personal brand to bring people to your event? We were debating between two people. I kind of blurred out the other person just so it's not embarrassing. But you can see that their brand was starting to drop off. There just wasn't as much interest. But there was kind of the, oh yeah, like, it's awful to say, but like a has-been or like used to be relevant. Whereas we looked at Dan Pink and we could see he was on kind of this breakaway moment. So while the price was catching up with Dan Pink on how much he was charging, we knew that if we targeted his fan base, we would probably get enough people to come, right? So things like this, just checking on the popularity of something, or you can't skip this stuff. Whoops. So part two, picking the right places. So you figured out what your sales moment is. You know what actually someone would want to buy. Where do you put it, right? So again, referring to this, you're trying to figure out at the top, at the attention level, like where do we go? Where do we spend our money to get the promotion and the attention? This is how it looked when like this is convoluted and it's going to make your eyes hurt. But the only reason I'm including this is to explain when we were in that brainstorm phase, we're like, how might we get attention and how might it flow through the website? And when people leave at interest, how might we get them back? Who knows how yours will look, but what you want to do is try to map out how attention converts into interest. Like it's kind of like an example. So we were doing email, right? And I forget the exact cost, but I think we were paying maybe $2,000 for the list that had 16,000 people that were interested in emotional intelligence. And the one that's half the size, we had like a relationship with them because they came. It was actually Harvard Business Review was the one that was under 8,000. They said we'll also do a mailing. Looking at these two numbers, and I've seen this happen over and over. Which one do you think brought more ticket sales? Like the smaller one, maybe? Yeah, because it's probably a trick question when I'm laying it out like this, right? It's true. The second one crushed it. This is what happened. We maybe sold one ticket from the 16,000 email blast, and we sold at least 12 without them even coming back to the site. We sold them on their first visit to the site. And the reason why is brand credibility. So never look at numbers meaning like that one is like the other. Like when you're presented with like multiple choices, look at quality. Like always look for quality, because that's 12 direct sales but we don't know how many, because our tracking, frankly, just like it wasn't good enough. We don't know how many people then came back to the site a few more times and ended up buying. But what we do know, that on some of them, we roughly noticed that it was about a 30-day buyer window. So from the first time they came to the site to when they purchased, on average, it was a month. And there was about 4 times that they came to the site before the purchase occurred. And you can do that just even using Google Analytics. It won't give you the full picture, but it's going to give you an indication of how many times people are coming back before they buy. So anyway, and the trade magazine was embarrassed. I'm not gonna say their name, but this is because they abuse it. They just take the money, they do the emailing for you, and then actually no results occur, right? This is I'm like particularly bad at taking screenshots. What we did is we took the host, like the MC of the event. We had on Dan Pink, because we knew there was a lot of people searching for Dan Pink. We made sure that there was a pre-roll ad that within the first few seconds it said, join me and Dan Pink in London at blah, blah, blah. But those first crucial seconds for someone that's in London on YouTube looking for a video of Dan Pink, suddenly they get an ad that says within the first few seconds before they can click the skip button that, hey, like, you know, it's cheeky, but it's like, Dan Pink's here, he's in London, join us. Like that, it actually worked, and YouTube traffic is still really cheap. Like you know, maybe 15 pence a click. Like it's cheap stuff. Okay. Like we try to one more that was quite effective. We target everyone in London that was following Dan Pink on Twitter, and made sure that even though he tweeted a couple times, you know, that was nice, we knew that we'd have to do more of the heavy lifting to make sure like it was noticed. And so what we did is we promoted things on anyone that was following Dan Pink on Twitter would see our ads for the event on their news stream. And the ad of course said first and foremost, join Dan Pink in London, blah, blah, blah. Almost the rest doesn't matter, because you already know that the followers of that person are interested in that person. If you can target then locally that they're in the area and it's coming up in 3 months' time, it gives them time to, like, again, do that 30-day buyer window and figure out if it's worth it for them. Like, this is how you target campaigns. This is how you don't waste budget on an audience that is miscellaneous. So, and then the last part, I'm just going to check the time, make sure I'm on it. Good, we're doing well. So multiple touch points. This is again coming back to what I said at the start, is if you're expecting to sell to someone, whatever it is, I don't care if it's an event or it's a product or a service, if you're expecting the sales to occur, you put all your budget to get them, like get the cold traffic to hit a website, like, you're missing the game, because a lot of the conversion happens after they've come for the first time, maybe interacted with your brand a dozen times, they've seen you on social media, maybe read 1 or 2 articles on your site. They're getting comfortable with the brand, and that's usually, anytime a price point is over about 100 euros, at that moment, you're pretty guaranteed, if they're coming back over and over, that they've warmed up. They've gone from cold to warm. And the chance of them stepping into like hot traffic, that's how the industry would call it, and buying always comes from multiple touch points, as long as you're, at a slightly more expensive product. So this is what it used to be like in the 90s. This is how you sold online. You got cold traffic and you threw it at a sales page, and that was all you had to do. So $1 in, $2 out, right? This is kind of where it's at now. You got cold traffic, you throw it at a piece of content that is not salesy at all. Like, which sounds bonkers, because you're like, we're here to talk about profit. But what trust me on this, like, having run many funnels, the best way to sell in 2016 and probably 2017, when you're introducing someone to an offer, is introduce them to something that has no sales in it whatsoever. Like, just strip it out. Like, yeah, there might be, like, on the site other sales stuff, but the page that they come to has to be interesting to the market, and it has to make them want to come back. That's your objective. Then if you can get them, then you deal with remarketing. So that's once they come to your site, is it a consumer type product? Then maybe you'll want to appear on Instagram and Facebook. Is it quite for you? Is it B2B? Can I then can I get into their LinkedIn stream, like their news stream? Can I get ad placements on other like business website that makes sense industry wise to them? Like the remarketing thing is you don't skip it. And it's also much cheaper than the cold traffic. You might be paying $1, $5 per person that comes in the first time to their site, but then suddenly you're paying about 25 cents for them to keep coming back, and maybe 10 cents. Like anyways, it's unskippable, and then eventually you go to the sales page. And I've seen funnels where they remarket to more content, and then finally a sales tone page, because they know that if they sell too early, it's off-putting and people won't come. And that's really hard for someone who's like, sell, we've got to sell, right? But it just doesn't work that well. And this is just for reference, this is how McKinsey used to, if you were getting consultancy from them, this is how they used to look at the funnel. Imagine whatever you're selling is like one of the orange ones, or I think it's orange, bronze, whatever. That like there's a point of awareness where if they're not aware of you, then you're not in the game, and that's where you're spending to get in front of your market. But then they're going to be like, who have I recognized before? Like, who do I trust? And they'll kind of like make that selection group smaller. And then they're going to step over to consideration, like maybe 3 or 4 different, if you're in an event industry, and you're in a specific, like maybe you're doing events for chefs, and there's maybe a dozen events in the next 6 months, they might pick 1 or 2 that they actually want to be at. That's when they start isolating what's worth their time. So, and often in B2B, you have someone who's like, who's in charge of like an assistant who's in charge of shortlisting it. And then finally, at that moment of consideration, one gets selected. So this is how Google explains it. And again, it's a little bit out of focus. But different traffic channels have different roles in the whole funnel. So social media almost always is about creating awareness, but you wouldn't use social media to try to convert into a sale. Like directly clicking on a social ad and converting. Often email, or like even direct, that they bookmark you, or they give you permission to get in touch with them. That's when the sales moment occurs. If you go on Google and you check, I think it's called like just Google assist interactions versus the final interaction. You can put in your industry, and it'll kind of map out how it thinks your different, like basically your marketing mix should be stacked. And then we already talked about this, but that's really where the retargeting goes in. You've got the cold traffic, they came to your site, and now you're using remarketing or retargeting, that it's often called, to get them to come back to your site. It's kind of unmissable. This is an example of that event, that HR event, that photo. This is how the remarketing looked. So there were 25,000 impressions. Doesn't really mean anything. To me, it's worthless. The clicks back to the site, very low. It's like 36 clicks. But here's what's crazy about remarketing. Even though they might see your banner ad and stuff there, all it's doing, even if they're not clicking on it, is it's reinforcing, oh, I saw that somewhere. Oh yeah. Like if they see you and you're not like stalkerish about it, you know what I mean? Like sometimes you'll be on a site and that ad follows you everywhere and it's too much. If you get the frequency right, then people will want to come back. And subliminally, by exposing your brand in multiple different ways, your odds of them buying just go up. And that's my last point to close this off. Is often you really want to understand timings during a campaign. Like this is email, for example. If someone enters in their email, not as a customer, but as someone who wants to stay in touch with you, if each email, like E1, E2, email 3, if all of them were selling, then people unsubscribe and they leave. But if you opt in with your email, and then suddenly the first email is something interesting, then the second email is something interesting, and then the third email, suddenly there's more of a, hey, do you want to buy this? And then if they click, they get put onto a different track. Like if you see E3 and suddenly they're on this new track, and that's more like the person showed initiative that they want to potentially buy something. So I'm going to go a bit more sales heavy. But if they don't click, email 4 again is something interesting, but it's not about sales. Maybe email 5 or 6, again, you present that sales moment. Like these kinds of things, understanding the frequency, like make a lot of difference in profit versus alienating a market. Anyway, that's I'm gonna try to. If there's any questions, I don't know how we're doing on time. Yeah, we've got about 10 minutes. If there are any particular questions on what you've seen now, like, and I think I don't know if there was a gentleman here that was going to help with the questions, but if there's any parts you want me to unpack for the next 5 or so minutes, I'm happy to do it. Yeah, nothing? Okay. I mean, that's it. I mean, this is. And you might not feel brave enough to ask, which is fine. I'll pop the notes on this URL in about a week's time. But is there anything that stuck out, or you're like, oh, that sucks, or no, that definitely can't be right? Like anything? I'm just curious, and it might not come out at this moment. No? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. Some pay, some don't pay. Okay. So the question is, if you're marketing to an association, and you might have some of the group that is a paying customer, and then you have the other allotment that's not paying. And what's the rough split of paying versus not paying? 20% are paying? Okay. Like I've seen this over and over, and I don't think it's just for corporations. You have to treat customers entirely differently than you would. I just know because right now I'm in a strategy where there's a law publication that serves lawyers law news. They've been treating their customers the same way that they treat their non-paying subscribers. And when we were looking through the numbers, like you can't offer the same thing. You have to treat like the number one thing is you have to first and create entirely different campaigns for customers versus not paying customers. And it might be that the customers, you're trying to upsell them on something, and you know that a lot of them, you just want to keep them and you want to respect that they're your customer, and so you're not too pushy, but you might offer premium offers. That's an entirely different campaign, right? Like in your next marketing meeting than the ones that haven't paid, because then you're still back at how do you get them to do their first action, and that messaging has to be completely separate. So, yeah, I hope that helps, but it's just never market the same way to those two groups. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
We are a small company, so we are not in events. We have a tour in a city.
Okay.
Mostly the problem when you start is to understand what do you do first. Because first, what is the minimum budget that you need for
Yes.
this? Or if it's at some point you don't have that budget, you should
To do tours?
Yeah, we have
So,
a tour
okay.
in one city, and when we go on Google and look into the world,
Yeah.
we first need to find
So,
who are coming.
so the question is, so you run a tour company and you're trying to, in a specific city, and you're trying to get people in that the city to come on it. Do you have your max CPA? Mm-hmm. Then you're burning. So at this point, like here's the reality. I know, like when you're new, here's the raw truth. You're going to lose money. Like and the thing about it is you have to do a controlled burn. Like you have to invest when you have no data to actually give you like a heads up on like, will someone want to go on this tour? You have to first qualify, is my content and my website interesting? And it might be harsh. It might be like, it's not good enough, or it's working. Then you'll be like, where's my market hanging out? And then you're going to have to test throwing traffic to the website and watching how it performs. So it's so crucial that you set up like even Google Analytics to just measure what's going on and some goals. So when they do convert, maybe it's a phone call or an email to you, that might be the lead. They might, like they're not buying on the website, they are buying. Okay, so if the website is self-contained and they can buy on that, I would be tracking that whole conversion. So, okay, we're trying Facebook traffic and we're throwing it at this page. Are they going to the next page? Oh, we're losing them. They're spending 10 seconds on the page and leaving. Okay, that didn't work. New page or new traffic. Like that formula at the start, the traffic plus website, like you often have to lose some money to figure out what's working. And the moment you get to the, I put in, you know, €1 and €1 came out, that's magic when that moment happens. Even when it's like I put in €1 and I got 70 cents back out, it's like we're not there. But I know that maybe if I keep massaging this, I can get it to a break-even point. And it might take you 3 months. It might take you 6 months. Like this is the unfortunate bit about it. It's often faster when you have more money to throw at it because then you can learn faster. But it's unfortunate, like, and that's also where ripping off your competitor, ripping off your competitors is super important because you wanna reverse, and that's a whole different discussion. But reverse engineering what your competition is doing and looking for strains of things like traffic channels that are working for them, and being like, I saw this ad on Facebook for this tour company. I clicked it, and you take a snapshot of the ad. Here's the page that I ended up on. You take another screenshot of that, and then maybe you follow it through. You even buy like a tour with them. I know it's cheeky, but like you find out their whole funnel, and you have screenshots of that, and you do it for a few competitors. That'll quickly speed up how fast you can move and maneuver because you know what's working and what isn't. So yeah, it is. Yeah.
For A/B tests,
Yes.
what is the best practices?
Okay. I think so. Last question, I think, because it's yeah. So the question is A/B testing. When you use A/B testing, it might be even. I'll riff on this tour one. Why not? You've got, let's say, you could do it at the attention level, so you could have 2 different ads that then go back to 1 page, or you could have an ad that is working for you. So now you're testing the page to see can you improve the conversion. Yeah, so I usually start at the top of the funnel and work my way down. So once I figure out traffic sources that seem to be showing quality and people are resonating with it, then I move down the next level and I'll be at interest. So I'll be like, maybe we offer 2 different pages. And by the way, when you're doing A/B tests, like at least have like a little understanding of statistical significance, because if you're throwing, let's say, 200 people to a page and you're trying to make judgments on just 200 people, that's not enough data to actually make like a logical conclusion that something is working or isn't. But if you're throwing a few thousand people to a page and you're watching how they behave, suddenly you have enough data to make like a judgment call if something's good or not. So yeah, again, it costs, but you need to have at least a couple thousand people coming to either the ad or to the page. Otherwise, it's like you're doing A/B testing, but actually you're not getting the value from it. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. Hope this was of value. Yeah, it's a tough one with A/B. I've seen it done wrong so many times. That's why I'm like, or people are like, we've just got 100 people. How do we, you know? And that's, yeah, no, pleasure. Yeah, sure.
How long time did it take for this conference you have from the first day you did your website until you sold your first? Thank you very much.
Oh yeah, thank you. Hey, yeah, I hope it helped. Yeah, cheers. So, for the EQ summit, yeah. We had we fired, we lost, hopefully this isn't, but we lost 10,000 pounds on an ineffective email marketing company. You know, the talent bit? We had to cut it because they weren't actually producing sales. We drained quite a bit of money on Facebook, maybe like 5,000 on Facebook, and it wasn't working that well either, so we had to stop that one. The ones that were working, we played with YouTube, and suddenly it was bringing us quite a bit of like good traffic. So we started like, it's like we had an X amount of budget, but then we started shifting it to the channel that was working. It took us probably 3 months. We had a 6-month campaign. Okay. I'd say the first 3 months we made a ton of mistakes.
Yes.
You know.
Okay.
And then we hit the nerve as to, oh right, Dan Pink, we basically the whole campaign switched over to Dan Pink's audience, and we just went like flat out on just marketing specifically to his followers. Because that was the only, like, people just weren't sticking around. And it might have been the price point too, because I didn't have control over how much the ticket sales were, because that wasn't like my role. It was, my whole role was well, just make them buy it, you know.
Yes. And you talk about your talent. How do you, I mean, you recruit people, and did you pay to them, or it was like like people working, and then until you sell everything, you split the profits to them?
I usually I'll hire them as
You hire
suppliers, yeah. And what's I have it's kind of like I have a cluster of like trusted suppliers, and then usually on every campaign I throw it. I'll throw in a new untested supplier. Maybe I hear someone's good, and I'll test them out. And if it works well, then I use them again. If it doesn't, like there's in everything I do, there's a bit of experimentation even at the supplier level, because sometimes I just take a punt. I'm like, I wonder what they'll do with 5,000. I just kind of like, show me what you can do with 5,000. If they're able to make it profitable, then I'm like, awesome, let's do more. And in many cases, they don't cut it, like that email marketing firm. Yeah, I know it's like it sucks, but like I now expect to go through that process. I don't expect everything to perform, and that's I guess the pessimistic part of me. But it kind of I feel more at ease because I know I'm expected. If I have X amount of chips and I push them over here, and that's not working, well then I pull some back, push it at a different one. Yeah,
All right.
you know.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
no, yeah, thank you. Yeah, yeah. I mean, no time for hashtags, but you know what I mean. Like I think you can get into the tactical stuff, but knowing who to run the hashtags on and that kind of thinking, it's often like where it starts. So. Yeah.
Is your family originally Czech?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm first generation Canadian. How do you know?
Oh, because I was a Czech.
Oh, are you? Yeah. Oh, right. Fair enough.
Yes.
Yeah, I did. Cool. What? Yeah. What do you? What's? What? Are you guys together? Is it?
Well, we work together, but
Yeah. What are you guys doing?
French ready?
Yeah, Prime Strategy is.
We originally did market research projects,
Uh-huh.
but we had to do events to do the market research. So then that business grew, and then we got
Okay,
into
so
the
your
events.
market research.
Yes.
Okay.
And then we got into the
Like
events.
Mintel type stuff, or are they different?
ITM real estate. RTM real estate.
Okay. Right. In
Based
the
out-
Czech Republic, or
No,
are you just serving
from the
from?
office. From the office in the US.
Okay.
Yeah, our main office in the US. Yes, that's why.
All
you
right.
live in the U.S. or Europe?
Originally
Canadian.
Canada, then the States, and now the last 7 years in London.
No.
Yeah. And snažím aspoň trošku mluvit česky, takže ti jdu do Prahy. So, yeah. So I love it. I do
Because
love
of your
Prague.
name and your surname. That's why.
Cool. No, very cool. Well, be in touch. Did you get a car?
You know.
But
I don't mind my car.
especially because I always try, like, especially with Prague, any excuse to like get out
To
there
go there.
more. Yeah. Oh, I got engaged in Prague. Like, it was, yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Fantastic. Nice
Thank
to
you,
meet you.
Filip.
Yeah, thank you.
Šilo mi je moc.
Yeah.
That's why that.
Yeah. That's. What's that? Yeah. Absolutely. Oh. Oops. Sorry, I'm making tons of noise. With this thing. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
See you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Nice to meet Hans.
Hans?
And then,
Yeah.
you say you're based in the